You know what? While Robert is getting here, because I think we'll start with the Johnny Depp, the Johnny Depp situation. I mean, if anybody doesn't know, Johnny Depp was suing. Her last name is Heard. It was his ex-wife or wife, ex-girlfriend in the He was suing the Sun for defamation in the UK for an article that they wrote in 2018, in which they labeled him a wife beater. And the story detailed alleged abuse between him and his wife. And Johnny Depp sued the Sun in the UK. And he sued, I don't know who it is in the States, but he sued someone else, at the same time, roughly in the United States. They had something like a 16-day trial in the UK. It was after the COVID restrictions, and so it was delayed because of that. 16-day trial where they get into the nitty-gritty of their relationship, Johnny Depp's troubled history, his substance abuse. And the judge comes down with, I think it's a 112-page judgment. It was 586 paragraphs, a tremendous judgment. Basically just saying Johnny Depp has proved the damages to his reputation, but I believe, after having seen all the evidence and basically said I agree with Heard's version and give her full weight, full credit, I believe that the article itself is substantially true. And that's the standard in the United Kingdom for defamation. Truth is an absolute defense, although they have invasion of privacy, those types of things. But truth is an absolute defense. And the judge concluded that the article was substantially true and basically said, I believe everything Amber Heard, that's her name. I believe everything Amber Heard said, and I don't believe Johnny Depp. I believe all of Johnny Depp's witnesses are biased. I see Robert, so let's bring him in. I believe all of Johnny Depp's witnesses are biased. They will do anything to support him. I believe all of Amber Heard's witnesses. And this shows you one thing. When you go in front of a judge, it's a crapshoot, and you never know what's going to happen. Robert, how you doing?
Good.
So I figured we'd start with Johnny Depp because it's totally unrelated to politics or of the elections, and then we'll work into the other stuff. So I gave everyone the rundown of the facts. The person whose link you sent me, who did the video on it, it was Lost Beyond Pluto. Do you know who she is in general, or did you just stumble across her channel as well?
So I stumbled across it.
Okay, because she did it was a call it a bias analysis in that she thinks Johnny Depp has been done wrong, and I tend to I can agree in having gone through the judgment. What do you think of this? So this judge basically says, I've heard you for 16 days. I don't believe you. I believe you. Substantially true in that there were physical altercations, dismissed, and now apparently he paid $5 million in legal fees, might be held for the Sun's legal fees. I mean, what's your take on all of it?
I think it's in a enlightening case at multiple levels. First is the way the UK appoints judges and the way they handle trials and the way they conduct appeals are the way some in the legal class here want the United States to function. And the Johnny Depp case, and what I consider kind of an absurd judgment, are a reflection of why that's all a bad idea. So in the UK, the judges are not politically appointed. In fact, there's no political control over them really at all. There's an independent commission that appoints them. So they're not appointed by elected officials. They're not directly elected. They're not really held accountable to the populace at all. That's problem one. It's the reason why people have occasionally wanted to bring suit in the UK and wanted me to recommend lawyers for them to bring suit in the UK, particularly for libel issues, because you don't have the First Amendment limits for libel that you do in the United States in the UK. And I've generally recommended against it for some of these reasons. So part one is, you get a randomly assigned judge. You have one person deciding your case. For the most part, the second thing with it is not only don't have politically appointed, politically responsive judges, but they've mostly abolished jury trials in the UK. I mean, the place that originated under the Magna Carta, the idea of jury trials, has mostly now eliminated it. This has been a big push of the professional class in the UK. Much as they love the EU. They love the EU because it involves almost no jury trials of any kind. It's just it's government by bureaucrat. And the Johnny Depp case shows you what government by bureaucrat looks like, and it's usually pretty ugly. And then the third aspect is you don't meaningfully have a right to appeal there. They say you do, but that's really not true. You have a right to beg them for the permission to appeal. That's what you have. In America, that would not be considered the right to appeal. The right to appeal is the right to be heard, the right to actually have 3 appellate judges make a decision in your case. That's not present in the UK, and there's probably no more egregious example of it than the Johnny Depp case. So I thought the first utility to it was the problems with a UK-style justice system, and why the Johnny Depp case reveals why we never want that here in America.
And what's amazing is because it's very similar, at the very least by my comparison, to what we have in Canada. Judges are sort of they're not politically, I mean, they're appointed, but they're certainly not elected, and they don't have any responsibility to anybody, or what's the word I'm looking for? They have no, say it again?
They're not politically accountable to the people.
They are not politically accountable to the people. Now, you typically they do their job well, although some out of control or less competent than others, and they're on the bench for life, and there's nothing you can do about it. The thing about appealing here, there are appeals of right if the amount in dispute is over a certain amount, but not in the case of dismissals. And then after that, there's certain circumstances where you have to ask for permission to appeal. So there's no appeal of right, but it depends on the nature of the file. In this, what I find amazing is that you put all your eggs in the basket of one judge who, I don't think anyone's going to read this judgment and think that the judge did not have something against Johnny Depp. Now, there's some conspiracy theories, I call them conspiracy theories, that there was a conflict of interest, that the judge had co-written a book with someone who was friends with Amber Heard. I mean, that's sort of many steps beyond what would ever reasonably call for the disqualification of a judge. But when you read this decision, errors in appreciation of evidence, which is the judge's prerogative, but I think errors in law where the judge says Amber Heard's recording where she's talking out of court about not being able to promise to not be violent with Johnny Depp in the future. And he says, I believe her in court because she's under oath. So when she's testifying under oath, she knows that if she lies, she'll be held in perjury, so she's going to be honest here. What she said out of court was not under oath. It was out of court, so I'm not giving any weight to it, which is the exact opposite way to deal with these types of admissions. This would be like the exception to hearsay, where you would hold that against the person because it's against her interests, said when she didn't think she had a legal requirement to tell the truth.
It was some absurd evidentiary rulings. The second thing that stood out to me about the case is it is a great example of confession through projection, confession through accusation. The behavior panel did a great diagnosis of Amber Heard's deposition testimony. Amber Heard is clearly the abusive personality. If you dug into the data, dug into the information, watched her testify, watched her accusations, looked at each other's history, looked at independent third-party corroborative evidence, as you note, out-of-court statements that are party opponent admissions are particularly powerful evidentiary tools because you don't know that's going to be used against you, and you don't know, you have more reason to be honest in that setting than you do otherwise. Whereas the judge actually went out of his way to accredit self-serving hearsay, but discard the damning tapes. And I did a lot of domestic violence work. It's also a reflection of the Me Too problem gone amok. You have a judge who clearly just takes those, she says she's abused, so I'm just going to take her word on everything, even though she was caught lying repeatedly. The tapes show that she was the abuser, not the other way around. But all of those aspects, if you listen to what Amber Heard says about Johnny Depp, she's describing herself, the monster, as someone who can flip on a dime, someone who can come after someone. I mean, someone who had a history of assaulting her past people and this is the other aspect. In all my domestic violence cases, it's a psychology that's at root, and it's a modus operandi of behavior. And they often believe when they're physically assaulting someone that the other person is at fault. It's a deep psychology. There's a wide range of triggers. They're not trying to simply assert their power over someone, which is kind of the mythology. It's more they're trying to quell the internal chaos going on in their own brain. And she keeps describing this, and she attributes it to him, but she's describing herself. Chaotic behavior. People, you can watch how she calms down the more angry people get around her. I mean, all the indicators are there of her behavior. The way, she would grab Johnny Depp and kiss him in front of other settings in a way that if a man did it, you'd be like, that's a little possessive. So there's a lot of behaviors like that where she's clearly been in assaults apparently involving prior loved ones, family members, you name it. There was a pranked episode where you see her behavior is not rewarding behavior. And so she accused him of doing everything she in fact had done. The other thing is, you look at how she handled the case. She immediately hires an investigator to dig through his past. That's what Johnny should have done vis-a-vis Amber Heard. Because my guess, you dig in, people who engage in domestic violence, it's part of a psychology that's a problem in their own head. And it doesn't matter who their loved one is. They engage in, they do it to all of them. And so you'll find a pattern of history. If you don't find a pattern, then that suggests that the accusations might not be accurate or truthful. I was when I was representing a lot of victims of domestic violence, people in the social work world had a tendency to have an early version of Me Too, which was believe any accusation no matter what. And I always wondered, why do you think people magically quit lying? Because the subject matter changes. The nature of lying is the nature of lying, and the motivation and the means are what drives whether someone lies, not whether or not the subject matter is such that you wouldn't think they would lie about that. But she clearly, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good. To me, I mean, I tend to agree with all of this. I just, at the end of the day, it's messy enough that the judge could have gotten away with a similar outcome without being quite so one-sided. And this is something that people just don't understand and don't appreciate. When you sue, it's a two-way street. There's discoveries. They're going to drudge up dirt, whether it's relevant or not or determinate. They're going to get into Johnny Depp's issues. It's not going to make him look good. So even if there's one incident where he throws a bottle and it breaks, is that enough substantially true, to justify the label that the Sun gave him? Who knows? But you're leaving it in the hands of a judge, and it's a crapshoot, and everybody comes out dirty, or dirtier, I should say.
I mean, there was public calls for him not to have fired his lawyers because there were people who identified these risks in a UK suit, that people who've been through it before recognize you're at the whim of a judge who's not politically responsive, who can issue a ruling. But the other aspect of this case, I mean, like she, for example, hired an investigator to go through his whole past. The investigator ended up turning evidence for Johnny Depp because how many people attested positively for Depp. There's like 200 people the guy interviewed or thereabouts, and everybody's like, this is not him. And so it was clear that he had been wrongfully impugned. He's lost a lot of money related to this, but he had sued her. I think the problem is she's not going to have that much money to be able to pay like the Sun would have. The Sun has likely a big libel insurance policy in place. So I think that was why they sued who they sued. But I think he would have been better off just vindicating his public name, which he partially did through the trial. And what was intriguing, like the reason why I sent that one video, she started out hostile to Johnny Depp. And there were others who did too. Most of the people, like I would say it was split almost 50-50, but this was during the Me Too era that Amber Heard came up with these accusations. I early on thought they were likely false. I knew people who know Depp who he's never had that history at all. And like I said, people don't just suddenly become abusers and domestically violent stalkers overnight. That's not a common phenomenon. That's a rare phenomenon. And whereas she was showing a lot of the behavior problematic issues being present. And it looked like a shakedown, and it apparently probably was. But he sued her in Virginia, and he should have just focused on that suit, because there he has a jury trial right. There he has a right to appeal. There she's going to be the primary witness of a kind, which wasn't a guarantee, because the Sun could always hide behind, to some degree, what they thought at the time and what they believed to be true, which is independent of what is true. I mean, now they argued a substantial truth defense. But as you know, the last component is this is what motivated reasoning looks like. In the future, I'm going to give that decision as an example, because you don't even have to know anything else about the case. You just read his decision and you're like, you're contradicting yourself on what evidence matters and what doesn't, what is credible and what isn't. What is,
as in trusting the witnesses, dismissing witnesses that he thinks have an interest, and then when it's one way and then giving them credit when it's another, dismissing Johnny Depp's witnesses because of misbehavior in the past, but forgiving Amber Heard and her witnesses because notwithstanding misbehavior in the past. It's if there's a decision to be appealed, this will be appealed, because I don't even think there's errors in law, there's errors of appreciation of fact, and I suspect the standards for review are the same in the UK that they are here, that questions of law, the court can intervene. Questions of appreciation of fact, it has to be manifestly unreasonable. I think we're reading that decision. It sounds like it is.
And and evidentiary mistakes. Like he would have been better off. He decided to make evidentiary excuses for why some evidence didn't have weight and others did, and a lot of it made zero sense. Because the big turning point, like people watching it, a lot of people had believed Heard going in, and first they see Heard as basically kind of crazy. Just watch her deposition testimony, and you can see what's going on. Also, in my experience, abusers always hire the meanest, nastiest lawyers. And her lawyer in that deposition is one of the nastiest lawyers I've ever met. I mean, I've dealt with whenever I was involved representing victims of domestic violence, I could almost always know whether the other side is an abuser by whether they hire an abusive personality to be their lawyer. I sort of came up with my identity sort of by accident, but through defending those people. I remember telling a lawyer once how many times has he got to lose before he knows what's going to happen next. But as a guy, I learned to really dislike these people. They're bullies. They're lawyers that are bullies. And she hired lawyers that make ridiculous objections that should have been sanctioned 25 times. I mean, he's speaking objections, telling the witness they don't have to answer a question, telling them they can just go on forever. I mean, it's preposterous what that Virginia court allowed to occur. And I believe it was Virginia court allowed it to occur. But it's a problem of the Me Too eras, the Johnny Depp judgment. He's been wrongly railroaded and wrongly accused, and now it's been vindicated and validated by a wayward judge who applied rogue rules in ways that you can just read the ruling and be like, this guy's not impartial. This guy's not making an objective definition. He decided to side with Amber Heard for whatever reason, whether it's Me Too impact, whether it's I would say, by the way, there's you have an older male judge and a younger popular actress. There have been studies, both judges and juries tend to be more sympathetic to opposite sex gender appeal. I had it in the case of my own once. So
I would have just gone with the idea that there's more social pressure for the judge to side with Heard, where he wants to frame the judgment that way to avoid scrutiny after the fact, to say, oh, he didn't believe her. This is patriarchy, misogyny on the bench. And so this judge is sort of, not call it virtue signaling from the bench, but something along those lines, where he felt compelled to come to this decision, notwithstanding or, irregardless of. Anyways, and then now he's got this judgment in the UK, which is going to impact the lawsuit in the United States, and we'll see what impact it has. But
I mean, it already cost him the role in that movie, the Fantastic Beasts sequel, whatever it's going to be. It's going to cost him $50 million or more. Her false accusations against him, and this court not doing its job, in my view. Because to give you an idea, folks, for the kind of evidence this judge discarded, he discarded police evidence. He discarded doctor's evidence. He discarded expert evidence. He discarded every single piece of evidence that came from independent third-party people, and he discarded audio tapes of her admitting she was the abuser, and mocking and behaving in an abusive way, talking the way an abusive person does. So all the expert testimony, independent testimony, and independent evidence was against her. He manages to discard all of it while saying, well, Johnny likes to drink and Johnny likes to party, so that means Johnny is guilty, this poor little victim. I mean, he makes Amber Heard look like the made-up version she's fabricated to the world. So it's an embarrassing ruling, hopefully the UK court, but the UK courts don't have to take an appeal. He has to ask them for permission to appeal, and often they don't grant it. And it's the main lesson from the Johnny Depp case, aside from the dangers of motivated reasoning, the dangers of the UK legal system, and the dangers of Me Too, is that be careful what you wish for in some of these cases. That think through what the end game is before you start it off, and that's applicable to some of our election suits as well.
Yeah, well, no, and we're gonna get there, and I think people want to get there. People don't want to hear anything that's not election related. There's some people. We'll get to the elections, people. Okay, we're just gonna go through one decision, which should highlight everything. When someone says sue, when someone says, which was the case? I think it was Dominion. People were saying the fact that the allegations against Dominion are true is the fact that they haven't sued for defamation. This illustrates why you don't jump into lawsuits, even if you know you are right, because you just never know, and the outcome can be double bad because it costs you money. It costs you now street credibility, in that you can no longer say I was never found guilty, or not found guilty, and now it's going to hurt him in this case in the United States. So it's a loss all around. We'll see what happens in appeal. It's an interesting story. Whether or not you wanted to know about it, people out there, now you know about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.